Hello, everyone. My name is Gitika Gorthy, and today I am very honored to be interviewing a very special space champion, Dr. Jeffrey Jones. Dr. Jones is a professor at Baylor College of Medicine with a joint appointment in the Department of Urology and Center for Space Medicine. He is a board certified urologic surgeon with fellowship training in urological oncology and is board certified in aerospace medicine. He is a fellow of the American College of Surgeons, American College of Preventive Medicine, and the Aerospace Medical Association, and a part of the American Medical Association. He is currently the Chief of Urology at the Michael E. DeBakey Veteran Affairs Medical Center and an active participant in the Southwest Oncology Group. He is also a US Naval Flight Surgeon, currently the Reserve Aeromedical Specialty Leader and Wing Surgeon with Fleet Logistics at Naval Air Station Fort Worth. On top of all of that, he was a NASA flight surgeon for 13 years and served tenures as crew surgeon for Shuttle and ISS missions, the lead flight surgeon for both the International Space Station and Exploration Medicine programs, the NASA JSC Radiation and Countermeasures Integrated Product Team Lead, and Multilateral Medical Operations Panel Radiation Health and Countermeasures Working Group Lead, and has been co-investigator on multiple spaceflight medical science studies. Dr. Jones' research and work experience, which is something I truly hope to do in the future, and recognitions are truly inspiring. And I can't wait to learn more about Dr. Jones' story. Welcome, Dr. Jones. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to conduct this interview.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me, Kit. I'm glad to be here.
Before we get into understanding your space journey and what really got you into space medicine, first I'd like to know more about your typical day. What do you currently do and how does it run?
Well, not every day is the same. Every day is a new adventure. And that's the one thing about the world of surgery is that there's excitement rating around every corner.
Yeah.
Some days we spend a whole day in the operating room.
Yeah.
So we spend the whole day in the operating room. Some days we are in our clinic environment. Some days we're doing procedures in our clinic. Some days we're seeing patients preoperatively or postoperatively. Some days we're doing clinical research, and we're engaged in planning research for other future studies. For example, with colleagues, sometimes we meet together face to face at meetings. Sometimes we do it nowadays via Zoom or other video conferencing software. But we meet together to talk about what kind of future research we might want to do in addition to what we're already conducting. So every day it's a new challenge and a new adventure.
Yeah, especially in the medical industry or especially in research, every day is new and exciting. And I think that's one of the things that intrigues me. I'm sure a lot of other scientists out there about this, science sector. And so you've been a part of so many different experiences, like I was mentioning above, and you probably have some exciting projects or research that you've worked on. So what is the most exciting, if you had to pick one, project or research that you've worked on?
Well, that would be exceedingly hard to just pick one, but I guess I'll tell you about at least one that was, I would say, very exciting at the time. It was during Expedition 5, and Peggy Whitson, American astronaut, was the science officer for that particular expedition. And it was the very first time we used active ultrasound real-time in space and downlinked the images live, and had myself and Dr. Ashot Sargassian there to receive the images, interpret the images, and give feedback to Dr. Whitson while she was on board the space station. So the activation of the Human Research Facility International Space Station ultrasound for the first time was very exciting. I'd say that was at the top of the list, but we've engaged in so many new and exciting projects in the world of cancer therapy and cancer treatment that I would say that have equal, on par in terms of the satisfaction it provided in participating. But that one, I would say, kind of sticks out from a memorable experience at the Mission Control Center in Houston.
Yeah, I am definitely sure. And that brings up a good question, which I was always curious on. There are so many scientific experiments being conducted on the ISS. So how do you believe that space will help us advance in the medical industry for those here on Earth?
Yeah, that's a great thing to understand because there are many different technologies that spin off of the work that happens in space, and people don't realize how many of the things they enjoy now on the planet came from research that was done to support space flight, and that's also true in the medical industry where we take telemetry for granted as an example, but telemetry was first developed to monitor astronauts' health remotely. And so a lot of the technology we use commonplace in medicine had derivations in the space industry. And I would say, doing the research on the space station now, there are certain things that we have learned about protein chemistry, about the role of gravity and the ability of organisms to orient and to develop properly. All of these things are unique to the space environment in low Earth orbit. But I think that when we start to explore the solar system and go to other planetary bodies, back to the moon and then to Mars and other locations, maybe asteroids, maybe the moons of Jupiter, we may find other new and exciting things to take advantage of. So exploring the solar system has been one of my great dreams. I sure hope to see it in my lifetime.
Yeah, I am very looking forward to the first human mission to Mars. I think it's going to be a very collaborative project, and I just can't wait to see it happen. And you were definitely mentioning how we definitely take granted for a lot of space technologies we have today. I mean, a common one in my life right now is the GPS. I mean, as a new driver, that without the GPS, it would have been a very difficult task to go to places. So I definitely agree that without a GPS, my life would have been a lot different. And I'm very grateful for the various space technologies we have today.
I
And
would
so,
say, talk about GPS, especially important in aviation. And all of us old pilots like myself learned to fly with the VOR methodology of localization. And we didn't have INS, didn't have GPS. And so all of those innovations that have, again, derivations in the space industry are just taken for granted by those today. Don't realize where it came from, don't realize it's supported by satellites, other space assets.
yeah, I definitely agree with that. And right behind you, there is a beautiful plaque, and it says Baylor College of Medicine Center for Space Medicine. So, could you explain to us maybe one or two research projects that you are doing or have done at the Center for Space Medicine?
Yes, I would say we have a very, I would say, forward thinking and innovative program at Baylor. We're one of the first, if not the first, medical school to offer a dedicated curriculum in space medicine. Being so close to the Johnson Space Center, it's made that very easy to interface with not only astronauts, but other space medicine providers, NASA flight surgeons and NASA researchers in the biomedical field. And so some of the projects we're working on now, we're looking for new countermeasures to be used for radiation to prevent the biological effects of radiation. We're working on a project to enhance the cervical spine health of astronauts and aviators with a new exercise regimen. And we're also working on projects related to bone health. And we have an active flight study where we're looking at the role of bisphosphonates in reducing the amount of bone loss along with resistive exercise while the crew is in space. So all of those things are active projects now. We have many more in plan. So I would say this is still in a very exciting time, having the International Space Station laboratories available to scientists and having the collaboration between Baylor and the NASA Johnson Space Center.
Yeah, I definitely will agree with the fact that Baylor College of Medicine is one of the only amazing programs that has space medicine. Because I was doing a little bit of research, and the moment I read about the curriculum, the environment and the space medicine importance at Baylor, I just fell in love. And I know that's definitely a unique program that not a lot of medical schools provide. So definitely very exciting research that happens there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I've read that you've participated in many prior human and animal studies of radiation, like you were mentioning, for radiation exposure, tumor biology, cancer therapy, and space countermeasures development. Could you explain a little bit more of some specific studies you did? Because I'm kind of curious on what you discovered or what you're trying to aim by doing all these research projects.
Yeah, well, we've taken the whole radiation countermeasures from the very beginning, developing a formula, testing it in cell culture first, taking the cells and culture to some of the exposure facilities like Brookhaven National Laboratories and the Chiba facility where we irradiate the cells and culture and then look at the effects of the formula on protecting the cells, looking at the chromosomal damage, for example, or the level of oxidative damage, oxidative stress. And then we went from there to the animal model. We did some small animal studies, and then we did some large animal studies actually in Moscow in Russia in collaboration with our colleagues in the Russian Space Agency. And after those studies were complete, then we began testing the countermeasures on some short duration space flights. Some of the shuttle crew used our countermeasure. And then we had a couple of the long duration crew members take it on their ISS expeditions. And so we've had a chance to study the countermeasure in multiple venues. We think that has some terrestrial application as well. When you can use these types of countermeasures for space flight, you could also potentially use them for individuals that work in the radiation related industries on Earth. Somebody's a nuclear power plant worker, somebody is a tender of an engine system on a nuclear powered submarine or a nuclear power aircraft carrier, like for us in the Navy. So those types of professions may also benefit from having some radiation protection. And certainly if there's some kind of nuclear accident on the planet, God forbid we have another one like happened in Fukushima, then perhaps people could benefit from having that sort of countermeasure for those sorts of unplanned exposures.
Yeah.
So I would say that is those types of concrete studies for extending space flight into the exploration class are very exciting. But we've also done a number of projects out in the analog environment. We hadn't talked about this previously, but we have studies where we've done expeditions to the poles, to both the North Pole area, what we're calling north of the Arctic Circle, and on Devon Island and Ellesmere Island. And we also did multiple studies at the South Pole region, looking for meteorites. For example, NASA had a large meteorite hunt on the polar ice shelf, and we did expeditions in the Navy and the Air Force supporting Operation Deep Freeze and fueling the AGO sites, the astronomical geophysical observatories at the different locations around Antarctica, and supporting the National Science Foundation and providing provisions to the scientists there, and expeditions going to places where humans may not have ever trod before. That was so exciting, and we even had a full simulation of a Mars surface exploration, wearing spacesuits in the hot meteor crater, a meteor crater that's very similar in size and configuration to the Shackleton crater on the moon, for example, or maybe some of the craters on the Martian surface, and doing that type of simulation in a very realistic environment, in a very cold and hostile weather-wise environment, very similar to what you would have in another planetary surface. I'd say those are a lot of fun in addition to being exciting, and that's what we want. Being explorers, going to other places where humans have never been, and exploring another planetary surface. I think that would be incredibly exciting. I think something that hopefully you'll be able to do in your career.
Yeah, 100%. When you're talking about it, I was like, oh, I should have been there when you guys went there because that would have been such a cool experience to be able to, as a researcher, also get an experience of doing that would be amazing. And I, had another question of mine, which is, what do you think of commercial human space flight in the future? Because you were also talking about short-term and long-term space flight in the future.
Well, yes, short term, we're talking about low Earth orbit type of missions, maybe even not even orbital, maybe suborbital flights with the commercial launches, whether it be with SpaceX or Virgin Galactic or some of the other commercial companies that are launching. Uh, and I think that those are going to be short missions, not even orbital, just suborbital, get into past Armstrong's line, past the critical line of being in space and seeing the curvature of the Earth and experiencing space for a few minutes and then returning back to Earth. And I think that's how we're going to start out. And once we prove we can do that safely, then hopefully at some point in time we'll be able to actually go orbital. But I think the more exciting thing for the commercial industry would be to be able to fly individuals to a space-based hotel or whatever, maybe a little bit more prominent than an actual hotel, but clearly with the kind of provision that would allow a commercial passenger to stay in space for a period of time, to adjust to the microgravity, to have an opportunity maybe to even do some research in microgravity, or to at least participate in things in zero G. It's not really zero G, it's microgravity, because you always have gravity when you're near a planetary body, but it's going to be a constantly changing gravity vector because you're traveling at 17,500 miles an hour. So it seems like you're in zero gravity while you're there, but so to speak, be able to stay in low Earth orbit for a period of time, I think would be a very exciting proposition. But obviously we need a place for them to go. And so that would be the next step after we've learned that we can go to space and back on a routine basis, like we fly from here to New York City, and we can do that safely and without undue stress on the passengers. Then maybe we can let them stay in orbit for a period of time.
Yeah, space tourism excites me so much. I mean, I think that's where space medicine is so vital and imperative, because being able to understand how, short-term effects can happen on diverse individuals is really important to understand. Because right now we send the most fit astronauts who go through heavy duty training, who exercise in space, but we can't expect of every tourist that goes up to space. So being able to understand those effects is really important for the future of space tourism.
I think you're right. I think we have to find a way for the medical organization, the space medical support team, the flight surgeons supporting these missions, to allow the mission design and to allow the countermeasures to be created so anybody that wants to fly will be able to. I think that's kind of a key thing, is to allow the average citizen, as long as they can afford it, I suppose, but the average citizen to fly in space and do it safely and without undue stress on the human body. And you're right, we select the best and the brightest from a physical and mental health perspective to go into space. And there is some challenges beyond just the physical, beyond the gravity loading, the G loading, beyond the rigors of the vibrations and the noise and all the other things. You have to be able to sustain a very confined and isolated environment. And it's okay for a few minutes, but if you're going to talk about days or weeks or even months or years, then that's another thing altogether that people have to get used to. And I think the psychological factors for those missions will be even more so important.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The future of also incorporating artificial intelligence into decision making up in space is also an important aspect that we should consider for the future.
But yeah, AI has a whole new arena, and especially when it comes to teaching the onboard crew what we call just-in-time learning, and having an environment that the crew can perform things in with assistance from an AI device, and something, a device that's learning as the crew members learning or interfacing with the crew members, so that the machine and the human can work together to solve problems. I think it's especially critical when we start doing planetary surface exploration. I think that you'll have crew members out EVA working in tandem with a robotic unit, and hopefully a robotic unit that has AI embedded, so it can learn and be evolving just as the crew member is.
Yeah, computer science integrated into medical aspects is definitely the future. And I can see telemedicine also going another, helping us further a lot in the advancement of the medical industry.
Yes, yeah. Well, telemedicine, I think, will be essential for these exploration class missions. Now, it won't be real-time telemedicine like we have here on the planet, where we can interface with the patient, or we can have one doctor in one city interacting with a procedure that's going on in another city, because it's relatively close by, and the communication is almost instantaneous with 1 or 2 second delay. But when you're out going to going to Mars, and your delay, especially on the planetary surface, you may have a 20-minute turnaround even at the speed of light because of the distance. Then it's all going to be like store and forward, or delayed interaction. It won't be real time. So we're going to have a lot of autonomy of those crews on the planetary surface if they're going to really be able to manage emergency conditions, emergency medical type conditions on another planetary surface. A little closer to moon, that lag time is just a few seconds, but Mars, it can be up to, depending on where the Earth is relative to Mars in the two orbits.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So now that we were able to understand a little bit more of like a lot of the research that's happening, I'm curious, what future research do you want to work on or hoping to work on soon? And would you ever go to space to conduct your research?
Well, I think that there still are some things that need to be worked out. One of the big problems we have observed on the International Space Station that we still don't understand the pathophysiology completely has to do with what's called SANS, the spaceflight neurological and optic nerve related changes that happen from long duration spaceflight. And I I have some theories about that. I think that it might be due to some impairment of the venous drainage from the head, and so an increase in the intracranial pressure and some transmission of that pressure to the retina and the optic nerve, and possibly also to diminish drainage of fluid from the head. So astronauts tend to get kind of a puffy face while they are in prolonged exposure to microgravity, and they adapt to some degree, but not all a crew member adapt the same, and not all crew members are affected the same by this. And so trying to understand this, if we're going to have a long period of exposure to microgravity, for example, in transition to Mars and back again with conventional rocketry, it may take a while. Now, if we get better engines like Franklin Chang Diaz's Vasmir engine that can get there much quicker, it won't be as big a problem. Or if we can introduce artificial gravity during the flight so that you can pull that fluid down towards the feet, kind of like happens on the planetary surface, and not have that headward fluid shift and the increased intracranial pressure, et cetera, then maybe that problem isn't such a big constraint for exploration. But right now, that's one of the bigger ones, in addition to the radiation that I mentioned. I think we're doing pretty well with preserving bone and preserving muscle mass and cardiovascular fitness and the blood counts and all of the things that you would worry about that might be putting you at risk. Some people still feel the immune system may be impaired during space flight. Some of that may be due to microgravity, but it may also be due to the kind of stressful environment that crew during the launch and the heavy schedule, and maybe some changes in adapting sleep and noise and other things that affect one's health during a space flight. But I think for the most part, we're in pretty good shape to do exploration, except for this issue of the intracranial pressure and optic nerve and the retinal changes, as well as the space radiation and being appropriate countermeasures for that. One of the other countermeasures for space radiation could be some shielding, and you can't fly a bunch of lead. Number one, it's too heavy. But number two is lead's not that great a shield for galactic cosmic radiation. It'll generate a lot of secondaries. So we want to use something that's rich in hydrogen that doesn't have any neutrons, so you won't generate the secondaries from the incident radiation exposure. I would be very interested in pursuing this type of research in space, although my real passion is to do planetary surface exploration. So low Earth orbit, we've been there, done that for 50 years. We're ready to go and explore the solar system. So that's really where I would love to be involved. If there's a mission to go to Mars, human mission to Mars, I think I would be one of the first to sign up, even if it's one way.
Yes, 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 of course. And you're mentioning how there's like short-term and long-term conditions when you're in space. And so I'm curious, once you come back from space and you come back to Earth, do those short-term like effects reverse back or do they not?
Well, for the most part, yes, they reverse back. There's some things that we've observed that have changed that did not come back, and I can't say exactly on any individual ahead of time what will be kind of permanent changes and what will be reversible. For the most part, the changes in muscular volume, especially in the muscles that are involved with having the human stand upright, you tend to maintain the flexors and lose the extensors in space, especially the extensors of the back, and your feet get real soft because you're not walking on them, so you lose the calluses, and those all come back like they were before. The cardiovascular system, we maintain that pretty well. You lose a little bit in space, but you get that back pretty quickly. The vestibular changes can take a little while to recover. Some of the crew have observed those from long duration flights going from a week, 2 weeks, maybe even a month or so before the vestibular changes are completely corrected. Other crew members get them back more readily. So it depends on that individual crew member as how quickly things will recover. One of the things that we've noticed that have not recovered in all crew members is their bone density. Some crew members have permanent losses, and not just bone density, but the trabecular meshwork, the structural elements and the trabecular bone don't come back all the way. And the other thing, there's been some permanent changes in some of the crew members' eyes and their retina associated with space flight. Some folds and some cotton wool spots, things that we see in the back of the eye with an ophthalmoscope that have been permanent changes. And sometimes they even result in some visual acuity deficits that don't reverse. So most of the things come back exactly like the crew member before they went into space, but some of these are persistent.
Yeah, I'm glad that at least some of them are able to reverse back and it's not going to stay forever. But of course, there are a few things that, just stick with us once we're back from space. And so now that we were able to understand a lot more about your research aspect, I also really want to know more about your work in the past. So I mentioned you were working as a US Navy flight surgeon. And so I'm curious, how was it and how is it working as a US Navy flight surgeon? And how did you get into it?
Well, that's some of the best memories of my career. And right now, I'm in my 32nd year of service to our great country. And I've had opportunity to work 16 of those years with the Marine Corps, mostly with Marine Corps aviation, and then 16 years with the Navy. Some of those years with Fleet Hospital, but most of the time I've been with the aviation community. I'm currently with the Fleet Logistics Wing. The working as a Navy flight surgeon has been an incredible experience. I've been on active duty a couple times to support some of the conflicts that have happened over the years. Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan, Operation Iraqi Freedom, and when I was there, I was with a defined unit, but I obviously supported multiple different squadrons. For instance, I was assigned to the flight line aid station at Al-Assad in the Al Anbar province, where a lot of the staging for air support for many of the battles that occurred in Iraq and Fallujah, Ramadi, hit all of those close air support missions who were staged out of Al-Assad, and worked there in the surgical hospital as well as a flight surgeon. I flew a number of missions in support of those operations, mostly in the Prowler, the EA-6 Bravo, with VMAQ 2 and 3. I was there in support of VMFA 112, which is a Hornet, FA-18 fighter attack aircraft squadron. But I also flew some with the rotary wing squadrons. They had an HMLA squadron there with MAG-26, and as well as a VMGR, which is a C-130 squadron. And we were doing evacuations of ill or injured Marines out of conflict area back to the Army's surgical hospital there at Al Assad, and then from there we would stabilize them and then send them on to Balad or to Ramstein Air Force Base. And so those years, incredible experience. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And I'd say how I got into it. I always wanted to serve. My father was a navigator in the Air Force during the Korean War, and a flight instructor. And so I kind of got the bug for both service to my country and to aviation from my father. Almost all of my uncles served in either the Army or the Navy or the Air Force during their lives. And so I had a strong sense of, I guess, family service to the nation, and I wanted to do my part. But I would say as I got involved, it's not only exciting, it's very satisfying and rewarding to have an opportunity to do those things. And there's nothing quite like flying Mach 1.2, Mach 1.3 in a fighter aircraft, doing, I would say the Marine Corps mission to drop, weapons very close to where the troops are located in preparation for instance, a ground assault. You fly a mission we call pop-ups, or you're flying nape of the earth, you're flying below radar right above the ground at very high speeds, and then you pop up into the air and you invert and then drop down onto the target and release your weapon. It's an incredible flight experience. So there's nothing like it. And having been able to do that, and be an aviator as well as be a physician, I don't think there's any more exciting opportunities for physicians than to be flight surgeons. That's just the way I feel about it. I mean, I love doing surgery and doing that in the operating room, and that also has its times of excitement. Sometimes not so much as planned, but just the way life is, things happen. But the flying environment is an incredible thing for a physician to have an opportunity, especially at NASA. We did some tremendous flight opportunities, and training with the astronauts in the T-38, in the shuttle training aircraft, opportunities for the WB-57 when it was flying. There's a NASA Hornet as well. I mean, there's multiple different aircraft that we have, an opportunity to participate in as flight surgeons. So I definitely would recommend it if you have the opportunity.
Yeah, this is actually a pathway that I was considering because it was, when I heard about it, it was very intriguing how you could, have those like constant, like, when you're in the medical industry, you have the opportunity to serve your country, but also help the people who are out there fighting, and do what you love, but being able to have that environment. And so I was definitely looking into it. And so I'm glad to hear that you recommend this to all medical students to at least have a few years of experience doing it, because I think it, hearing from you, what you're saying, it sounds like an amazing lifetime experience that is hard to get by just working in a hospital.
Right. I mean, and like I say, working in a hospital is very rewarding, and I'm not discounting it at all. It's a fantastic thing to be able to serve. I work in a veterans hospital, so I have an opportunity to give back to all those individuals that served in our nation's military, and I think that's an incredibly important contribution for medical personnel. But to actually be out there on the front lines with our nation's top aviators, I think is also very rewarding and very exciting.
Yeah, yeah. Your experiences and your excitement definitely shows that. And so, did you always imagine yourself in the position you are in today? Like, did you always know you wanted to go into space medicine, or was there a moment that really clicked your interest into space medicine?
Yeah, that's. I mean, I always was interested in space. I grew up with it. My father was with NASA his whole career, and so we moved Houston, even before they built what was called then the Manned Spacecraft Center, before it became the Lyndon Johnson Space Center. So I grew up with Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, Skylab, the early Apollo missions, then the lunar landing missions. That were all part of my my childhood. I used to have some of the best show and tell projects, things my father would bring home and I could take to school, and none of the other kids had some of those things to share with the class. So I feel like I was a bit of a legacy from that standpoint in terms of space. But medicine, I think, was something I developed an interest in relatively early on. When I was in high school, I thought I was going to be a writer. That seemed to be because I worked with my school newspaper and I worked with my college yearbook, and I did photography and writing. And so all of those things seemed like an area I wanted to be in, but I also wanted to give to others and to be more in the service of my fellow man. And that's what medicine afforded me the opportunity. But it also, being in academic medicine, you can be both a physician and a writer. And so I've had an opportunity to write many papers and book chapters and participate in scientific endeavors and give presentations. And so I kind of been able to wrap in all of those early dreams into one career. I've been very, very fortunate and blessed by the Lord.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, it's very lucky to be able to combine all your passions and interests together and, have the opportunity to do what you love on a daily basis. And so did you have obstacles trying to pursue your passion, or was this mostly like almost like set up and you felt it was a kind of straight path for you?
Well, I don't think anything in this particular
Sure.
arena is like set up and easy. Almost everything that's worthwhile is going to require some effort. And I don't feel like there was any point in time anything was handed to me. I'd say that the one blessing I've had is just opportunities, and opportunities that I was able to take advantage of. But then it was up to me to make it work. And I think that luckily I've been able to pursue the things that really interested me, and I've been able to have very strong mentors in the different fields who could provide guidance and recommendations, and also be soundboards. Because, like you say, sometimes things don't go exactly as you plan, and you have to reassess, redirect, and then pursue on another tact, right? So I think that for young people, my advice would be to be perseverant. To don't let small things get in the way of pursuing your passions. Find ways to overcome those minor obstacles, and don't get discouraged. To keep your dreams alive.
That is amazing advice. I think always trying to remember your goals and your passion and never give up halfway because something stops you. I think trying to just even propel further off of your obstacle and take that as a reason to work harder is a mindset we all should try to learn and grow with. And my
Right.
last, yeah, yeah. And now that we were able to really get into insight of your space journey as well as your research, I'm very curious on your thoughts on the future of the space industry. So my last question for you is, how do you anticipate or foresee changes in the industry, and what excites you and what makes you nervous about the future?
Hmm. Well, I do think there's probably technologies available to us as humans that we haven't had access to. So I hope that those technologies can become commonplace and used for exploring space, and for one of the problems with conventional rocketry that we've been years is that you don't get anywhere very fast. I mean, you get there fast enough to get into orbit, or maybe even to have enough delta V to leave the planetary surface and go to other places, but it still takes a long time to get there, and that's one of the major hindrances. So I think the future of real space exploration is going to be better propulsion systems that allow us to get to places sooner. I think we have a lot of challenges in terms of sustainable life support, especially on another planetary surface. We need in situ resource utilization systems that ISRU that allow us to live off the land. That's one of the things that explorers everywhere on this planet, except for perhaps maybe Antarctica, have been able to find ways to live off the land. Whereas we don't have that on another planetary surface where there's nothing there to eat or drink, right? We're going to have to find our own way, and we need systems that can take regolith, lunar regolith or Martian regolith, and process it and create oxygen and maybe even water, or find water. Maybe there's water underneath the surface. Maybe there's water down deep in the Shackleton crater in frozen, permanently shaded areas of the moon. I mean, we're going to have a lot of things like that to be able to learn to live off the land, because if we really want to settle on another planetary surface, and to have permanent human presence like we've had on the International Space Station now for a number of years, then we're going to have to know how to live off the land. We can't be constantly relying on supplies from the Earth to give us the provisions we need to live. Being able to grow food on another planet, I mean, that would be incredible. But those are some of the challenges that lie ahead of us.
Yeah, I think the future, I know there's a lot of research being done on like artificial soil and being able to terraform and do all of these really cool things and other, for colonization in space. And I am a strong believer that there is water out there. It's just a matter of us finding it. I'm a strong believer. So I know that there is potential out there, and we can, advance as a society, because I feel like a few decades ago, if we could see the advancements we made now, it's been growing at a very exponential rate. And with the commercialization and private organizations and companies starting up and being more heavily involved in the space industry, I can definitely see a higher exponential growth of the future of space. So it definitely excites me.
Well, I think you're right on target when you say there's water out there. I think that we've identified with the Clementine missions and some of the other lunar satellite missions that there's probably water trapped on the moon, and I think that the other planetary surface missions to Mars give strong evidence that Mars was much wetter in its early period, and there's still water, subsurface water on that planet. I think there's very strong evidence as well on Europa, one of the moons of Jupiter, that there's subterranean water and at least ice. And I think maybe even Ganymede might have some water. So even within our own solar system, there's strong evidence that there's water on other planetary bodies. Now, when you get outside of our solar system, elsewhere in the galaxy, still TBD. But this is where we're going to need warp drive. We're going to need to be able to travel faster than the speed of light to be able to have humans get there in a reasonable time period. Maybe we can perfect the art of some sort of suspended animation, but that's another area of research that still needs some work before we can do that routinely.
Yeah, the future of space is literally limitless. There is so much space for exploration, and it's just a matter of doing it and getting the future generations to realize the importance of space. So I want to thank you so much, Dr. Jones, for conducting this amazing interview, giving us so much insight and being such an inspiration, and that you can achieve your dreams as long as you persist. So thank you so much for your time today.
Hey, well, thank you very much for having me, Gika, and best of luck to you. And I would say all those space enthusiasts, let's get together. Let's make this happen. I think the future of our race is going to be dependent on us evolving technologically, and the more we unite together in this effort, the sooner and more realistic it's going to become.
Yes, let us do this together.